Good evening, people. Yeah, first I'm gonna apologize for how the camera is. I don't really like to have my place plastered all over videos and whatnot. Plus, it's more important to listen to the message behind the face, that's what's more important. So let's just start. I want to break down a little bit and stop and search so we can try and understand what's going on with that. To understand why we get stopped and search, we first have to understand who we are and the roles we play being part of a system or society. But before we get into that, we need to look at a few words and understand its meanings. The first word is society. A society is a number of persons united together by mutual consent in order to deliberate, determine and act jointly for a common purpose. So I think that's self-explanatory to most, but for those that didn't understand, it's basically saying that a group of people can basically come together and form a society so long that their purpose is basically the same as the others in your group. Statute, a legislative rule of society given the force of law by the consent of the governed, which is you basically. Then that's basically saying that a statute, which is what's being passed a lot in today's society, is a rule of a society that can only be given the force by the consent, which is permission, of the governed, which is you. So if we are not given any permission or any authority to the statutes and legislations that's being pushed, then they can't gain any force and they don't really apply to us. And there's a common myth that the police actually police only by consent, and we'll get to that in a minute. Person. This is taken from Black's Law Dictionary. Persons are divided by law into natural and artificial. Natural persons are such as the God of nature formed us, which is our living cells, the one that we bleed and breathe. The artificial are such as are created by man and devised by human laws for the purposes of society, and government, which are called corporations or bodies politic. So it's basically saying that persons are members of a society. Artificial persons are man-made creations, and it's an artificial entity. It's not actually real. You could also say companies itself are also persons, believe it or not. So if we focus on the word society and its meaning, we'll find that a society can be created by a few individuals coming together to fulfill a mutual common purpose. Right. So what's the name of the society we know and we're a part of? It's actually United Kingdom Ltd, and it's a registered company, I think it was Companies House, but I know I've seen it on Dodds and Bradfords or something like that. So how do we know if we are members of this society? It's assumed that if you've got a birth certificate or national insurance number, then you're a member of the society known as United Kingdom Ltd. These are like your personal identifications. It's your personal contracts that tie you into the United Kingdom. So we're going to take this back a bit. When we was born in the hospital, our parents notified the hospital of its birth. The hospital then notifies the government that there's a child here that needs to be incorporated into their system. Remember, the government is part of the United Kingdom. The government, if you want to look at it on a corporate structural level, United Kingdom as a society is a company. The directors of that company are David Cameron and its government. They are basically the directors. Shareholders of the company are those with the birth certificates. Your birth certificate is also known as a beneficial interest and also known as your equitable interest. into an estate or into a company. We'll get back to that in a minute. So our parents notify the government that there's a child that needs to be incorporated in their world. The state then sent back a birth certificate to be filled out, in which our parents were informing the state that they have produced a product, or produced a child. The birth certificate was our parents' child's ticket into the United Kingdom. It was the transformation from real human beings into this artificial paper fiction entity called persons, artificial persons. So only those with birth certificates and national insurance numbers can be recognised within the United Kingdom, as the United Kingdom is a public society that only recognises its public subjects. Now anything outside that society, they call it foreign jurisdiction, and they don't need to recognise it, and they don't have to recognise it, because it's a different jurisdiction and it's a different world, and different laws then applies within these different realms, these different jurisdictions. So it's almost like this: the United Kingdom came to our parents and said, "Yo, we just noticed that your child, that you've just had a child, would like to sign your child up to enter into our society so it can do business. Now, in order for it to be recognised, it needs to have this document called the birth certificate. Your child then will receive all the benefits and privileges it needs to operate within our system, and we will look after your child as it will be insured nationally, hence the national insurance number." And so our parents went ahead and signed us over to operate in this new company. So, if we are members of this company or of a society, do we have a duty to perform within that company or within that society? The answer is actually yes. Now, how it works is, with a right comes a duty. Now, if someone's giving you a right, then more time you then have a duty to perform under that right. So if I've given you a right to, let's just say, punch me in my face, you now have a duty to perform and punch me in my face. That's the right I've given you. So, being part of a society, being part of a company, they've given us a right to operate within their system, within their company, within their grounds. Now, because we've accepted that right, even some of us without us knowing have accepted it, now we have a duty to perform under that right. We have a duty to perform within that society. So just always remember, with a right there is a duty to perform. Where there's a right, there's a duty. Let's take a look at the word consent. Consent is an act of reason accompanied with deliberation, the mind weighing as in a balance the good of or evil on each side. It means voluntarily agreement by a person in the possession and exercise of sufficient mental capacity to make an intelligent choice to do something proposed by another. It supposes a physical power to act, a moral power of acting, and a serious, determined and free use of these powers. Consent is implied in every action. Consent is implied in every agreement. It is an act unclouded by fraud, duress, or sometimes even mistake. So what that's basically saying is, consent is a deliberate thing. It's something that has to be, it has to come from a sound mind. Now, if you're being bullied into giving consent, then that's actually a fraud, and it's called duress. You know, it's basically saying consent has to be an exercise that comes from the mind and has to be purposely done. So you basically have to consciously accept their offer, or you basically have to consciously give permission